All right, let's pick up where we left off. Part 3, Chapter 19. Chapter 19. All right, stock option plans. So the idea is the vesting that we've been talking about is as if all the stock options became, available, exercisable on one day, right? But what happens if it's multiple days or multiple time periods, which is actually a lot more common? For them to become eligible over time. The idea is being that, a company would want to reward its employees over a period of time. They want them to stay there longer. So that makes just more sense, right? So what if the options vest 25% the first year, 25% the second year, and 50% the third year? That's what we're looking at here. How do we then record that? So looking at an example here, we've got 10 million shares of stock, and it's 20%, 30%, 50% in the 3 years, right? So the idea is being it's vesting 20% of the stock options are available after the first year, 30% after the second year. I'm always in the way here. All right, $3.50, $4, $6. Okay, so how do we calculate that? Well, what we do is we figure it out over periods of time. They tell us, right, it's 2 million shares, $3.50 a share. So that means the compensation that we're going to record is going to be $7 million, right? That's over the 3 years. Well, kind of over the 3 years. $3 million, $4, $12, and so on, right? So the idea is at the end of the day, we recorded all 10 million and we're going to record it over the 3 years. But the question is, and a little bit, you think maybe we would just grab these numbers to record, but that's not going to be the case. The way we're going to look at this is we're going to record compensation expense. In the first year, it's going to be $7 million because all 7 are vested after 1 year. But the second year vests over 2 years. So it's $12 million vesting over 2 years of time. So we've got to spread it to 6 and 6. And that is why we've got it 6 and 6 here. And the third year, we're going to be, if people have worked there for 3 years, they vested $30 million of options. So that's 10, 10, 10. So the actual compensation expense we would record would be 23, 16, 10, 49 in total. Okay, so I hope that makes sense that we're spreading it over the time periods in which they're earning it. All right, so what if we step away from that now? Let's talk about, those are stock options that just became available because of period of time, right? Then that's what our employer set up for us. Well, what if they have to meet a specific performance criteria? The market conditions have to be just so. The idea being, what if we reach, sales of $100 million, whereas, that's our goal. And once we reach that goal, then we can exercise the stock options. So the idea is it's an incentive, right, to do better, performance-based, market-based, whatever the case might be. So it's not just a time criteria now. So if that's the case, we kind of have to decide what the likelihood is of the people meeting those goals, the people working for us. So if we have an example here, we've got 10 million shares, $1 par, fair value being $8. And it says options are only exercisable if sales increase by 10% after 4 years. So what if we start out saying, okay, we're going to meet that. All's well and good. So we're going to record it's 10 million, $8, 80 million over the 4 years. So we would record the first year, the second year, and so on, right? Compensation expense would be, 20 million, 20 million, and 20 million, 20 million in theory. But that's January 1st, 2021. What if we decide, if we're taking it a step further, what if we decide after 2 years that probably not going to meet that target? Well, if that's the case, we do something kind of unusual, right? So the idea is year 1, year 2, we recorded 20 million, 20 million. And year 3, we were like, not going to meet the target. So if that's the case, what we'll do is we will actually reverse the first 2 years because it's not likely we're going to be putting that money out. So we're going to reverse the $40 million we expensed in the first 2 years, and we're not going to record anything in years 3 and 4. All right, so I hope that makes sense. One other example. All right, say our initial estimate is we've got the same setup here, same dollar amounts and everything, but it says, what if it's not probable right from the beginning? And then 3 years out, we decide that it is then probable. Okay, so it's the flip. We started out going, they're probably not going to meet those goals, so we're not going to record anything initially. And then so 2021, we record nothing. We don't record 20 million. 2022, we don't record anything. We don't record the 20 million. 2023, we go, oops, looks like we might actually meet those goals. Now we got to do some recording. So if that's the case, in year 3, we catch up. We record the 20 million that we should have recorded in 2021, the 20 million from 2022 and the 20 million from 2023. So we catch up and record the 60 million, and then 2024 we record that final 20 million, right? So the idea being, if it was should have been 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, 20 million, and we skipped the first two, then in year 3 we catch up when we realize, oh, you know what, we're probably going to have to pay that out. So kind of just a reverse conditions. All right. Okay, yeah, so if the target is based on changes in the market rather than changes on performance, right, hitting a specific sales target, then actually, what if it's based on the market? Well, the market is awfully hard to predict, as we all well and know over the past bunch of years, right? So if that's the case, we record the compensation expense as if there were no target, like we just record it, because we can't predict. So in that case, we're being conservative. We record it regardless of whether or not we think it's going to happen or we don't think it's going to happen. We're still going to record it. Okay, and like we talked about before, that RSAs and RSUs aren't as popular anymore. More companies are moving away from that. Okay, hang on a second. My recording got a little bit weird there. Plans marking. Okay, so let's move on to employee share purchase plans. Let's do that. The idea is that you are letting, I swear I don't know where to be. Okay, that's not good either. How about down here? I feel like I'm floating. I am a floating head. All right. Employee share purchase plans. Some companies permit employees to buy shares directly from them. Why? Because you want them to, right? You want your employees to care about how your company is doing. So they basically put some favorable terms into place. Maybe you get rid of the fees that go along with buying stock or anything along these lines. The idea being you're rewarding loyalty. Ooh, there you go. And like I said, you make it a slight discount to employees, something like that to encourage it. The idea being it is not included as compensation for the employees because they're actually buying the stock, right? But it's not considered compensation for the employees so long as it meets certain criteria. And the criteria is all employees can participate. Employees have no longer than a month after the price is fixed to decide whether to participate, and the discount is no greater than 5%. So you're not offering them any giant amount off or anything like that. You're just making it easier for them to buy your stock. So if that's the case, you're not going to include that into compensation. Okay. Hang on. Okay. Now, like I said, if they're met, you don't include it in compensation. You don't record any kind of compensation expense. You just let them buy the stock, right? But if they, so it should be like almost a line drawn under this. Now, how about if they don't? Oh my gosh, I'm so in the way. If they don't meet the criteria, then it does wind up being considered compensation if they violate one of those 3 things. So let's say an employee is buying shares of stock at a 15% discount. Well, now you just violated that 5% rule. So instead, people are buying it on $1,000. So you'd get the cash from the people, right? You'd record compensation expense for basically the discount, if you will, that you're giving them, and you'd record the common stock at its market value, or you'd record common stock and paid in capital excess of par if there was a par value. Okay, in this case, it's probably no par. All right. Okay. This is just a kind of a warning, if you will, and I guess that makes sense because we're the accountants and we should have warnings. The idea is you don't want to put it into play that it's, if you make it a big component of management compensation stock, you run into the risk of management potentially, manipulating earnings. You've seen that a couple of times in this chapter. What are they called? Earnings management, right? Where management does things to make their numbers better. I mean, there are certain ways you can manipulate things, and you've seen that in many places throughout this book. So if you're rewarding the management with great stock options or great stock awards based on performance or something like that, you have to be really careful that you're not putting them in a position that, they could be manipulating things, right? Enrons and things like that happen somehow. Yeah, so it's just a concern that they felt the need for you to think about and to bring up. All right, so let's talk about earnings per share. Okay, we kind of finished the first half of the chapter, which is stock-based compensation. Now we're talking about earnings per share a little bit. And we've talked about earnings per share. You've seen it since financial accounting, but we're going to talk about it in more detail than we ever have before. I know, very exciting, right? Earnings per share. So earnings per share, earnings per share is the only financial analysis ratio, if you will, that is required to be on the financial statements. Okay. Earnings per share, to put it simply, it's almost like what is the company earning on behalf of the common shareholders. The way the formula works is it's earnings available to common shareholders, which is really, I don't even know why they start here. It's really net income, earnings, minus preferred dividends. Because if you're a preferred shareholder, if you remember the rules, preferred shareholders get their dividends first. That's not really available to the common shareholder, which is why they say it the way they do. It's earnings available to common shareholders, divided by the number of common shares outstanding. Now that's usually where we stop. But now we've got a new word in here, weighted average common shares outstanding. Okay, because shares of stock, get sold from the company, get issued, get repurchased as treasury stock. So how do we account for them in this calculation? Well, that's something we're going to start doing in this chapter. Okay, now calculation of earnings per share, like I just said, it becomes more complicated when you have other things going on in it. This is referred to as a simple capital structure. Okay, and we will talk about, and that is where the word basic earnings per share comes into play. The other thing is going to be diluted earnings per share. So let's cover basic earnings per share before we start diluting things. All right, so I'm going to finish this video and I will start up another one.